thank you very much for that underwhelming introduction at this stage. I really thought we were going somewhere when I was saying I flew in from New York or somewhere. Next time, Claire Marie. Could I ask you all for a favour, if you don't mind? Could all of you join me in having a huge round of applause for the superb job Claire Marie is doing today? We shared the stage, as she mentioned, in Belfast last year, and I have to say she's really an incredible woman. But I think really she's doing a fantastic job today. So I just wanted to get that out there. I just want to start off by telling you a story that happened a couple of years ago now. It was in 2013, and I was giving a training course one morning, and I got this email in from an organisation in the US about a conference that was going on in Orlando. So anyway, as I say, I was just about to give a training course, so I sent an email to my husband and I said, oh, look at this conference in Orlando maybe someday. Now, when I say we had, like, I was the only one in the company at the time. I really and truly, I was literally going week to week, not even month to month, really in the teeth of the recession in Ireland. And I really and truly didn't have much at all. So I sent him this email expecting that, yeah, sure, I know, maybe someday things will get better kind of thing. But he didn't. And when I looked at my emails that evening after the training session, he came back and he said, well, what's wrong with today? Why can't you go? So I thought he was mad. And I started writing back the response to him and I said, sure, the cost of the flights alone. But by the time I'd written the email, I was on a training program myself at the time called the Enterprise Platform Program, where we had got €1,500 of a grant. And by the time I'd written the email, I thought, well, actually, you know, I could use the money to go to that conference using the money that we had from that. So what I did was I took that off the email and I said, right, no. And then I thought, for God's sake, who's going to run the business when I'm gone? And then I realised by the time I had that written, I said, but sure, hold on. I'm probably going to be jet lagged. New York are 5 hours behind us. So as a result of that, I'll probably have all my emails done in the morning, deal with the Irish business, and then go to the conference. So then I said, right, get rid of that. And then I thought, but sure, how could I justify all of this? Like, I'm just a young one in Dublin, going to a conference in Orlando. In all fairness, sure, does only kids go over to Disney there? And then I realised, hold on a second. And I mean, by the way, this conversation was going on with myself. He didn't see any of this. And I said, then I said at the end, and I said, you know what? If I was to go to the conference, I'd probably learn more there in an hour than I would of 2 years focusing on e-learning at home. So actually, I said, well, that actually doesn't make any sense either. So what I finally wrote was, well, maybe I should look at it. And then he said, well, actually, I think it'd be very beneficial for you. And that was it. I went. And I went again the next year. And now I'm going again this year. And somehow I found the money for it. And somehow I found my way of dealing with the Irish business. And it was absolutely justified. And all because when I said, imagine if I was to do this, and someone challenged me to say, why not? I really didn't have any answers. And that's what I would say is Claire Marie asked you this morning to write down on those bags about your goals. And I can imagine some of you wrote them down with a little bit of trepidation, but I would actually ask you, well, why not? Really? Why not? Because sometimes I've said things, or goals that I've said, and then I said, oh yeah, but you know, I couldn't do that. And somebody says, why not? And I kind of go, I don't know. So my point to you today, or my encouragement to you today, or my suggestion to today is not, in fact, to wait until the perfect moment. But instead what I would say is, well, take the moment and make it perfect. Because really, what's wrong with now? What's wrong with today? What's wrong with today being the start of achieving what you've written down on that page? And I'm sure, you know, you're saying, well, you know what? It's all right for you to say that because, I mean, you had all the answers at the time. So, you know, let's really think about this. Let's really think about, well, why is it that you may not be able to achieve what you wrote down today? Let's really think. Now, let's really hold this up to the lights here. So, and let's now think solutions and not problems, right? So the first one, obviously, is funding, right? Everyone's going to say, sure, look, I don't have the money to go, or to do, or to start, or to invest, or to whatever, right? Well, I would suggest you think differently. So, for example, one of the things you can do is just consider what initiatives are available to you to be able to pursue this objective. My very first time in Manchester was 3 years ago, and it was in May. And how do I specifically know when it was? Was because I was here the weekend of the Queen's Jubilee in the Manchester Town Hall. And it was one of the most amazing events, I have to say, I've ever, just the historicness of it all, and just what was going on, and the history of the building, and really and truly it was amazing. And what I was over with was a trade delegation from Dublin. We were brought over here. Now, not brought, we paid for it, but it was subsidised by what's called the Enterprise Europe Network. And the Enterprise Europe Network Northwest, I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's an organisation run by the chambers to help companies export across the EU. So they had got in touch with the Dublin Chamber, of which I'm a member, and said about organising this trade delegation, which was over a day and a half here in Manchester. So I met Midas, I met the Business Growth Hub, who I was tweeting with today, met various different organisations. And I have to say, before that day, I would have thought entry into the UK market, to me, it was this 55 million block of people who I was afraid of. And now, suddenly, I had an entry point in here because there was an initiative set up, of which we all pay the taxes for, that enabled me to be in the town hall that night. And that, I kid you not, that was the start of our entry into the UK, which is now responsible for 15% of our revenue. Now, if I had not sent back an email when I had got one about that trade mission to Manchester, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be in the UK at all. And that's all it took, was replying to one email. Just to go back and say, I'm interested in this, can you send me more? And then I got more, and I think it was something like €300 at the time for a day and a half over here. And I said, God, sure, it'd be worth seeing the place for that. And as I say, one thing led to another, and now I'm here. Another one is to actually look at, well, what's the opportunity cost? And this is a really powerful one, is if I had to say, okay, what else could I spend that €300 on? I could spend it on a lot of things, but I don't think that there's an awful lot that I could have spent €300 on that would have presented an opportunity to go into the UK. I really don't think it would have been. So when you actually sometimes look at, well, what's the cost of not doing this? That's where your motivation can be very strong. Because then you know you actually really and truly don't have a choice. And then thirdly, well, you can be creative. Think about, well, what could I barter? What is it that I could do for you and you could do for me so that we eliminated cost completely? Who is it that I could go to? What organisations could I leverage? As I say, in my case, was the Enterprise Europe Network Northwest. Now, I've worked with them to get me into Malta, where 10% of our revenue comes from. They're in the Southwest. I've worked with them in Bristol. I've worked with them in London. And they're really, really, really good. And as I say, their job is to help companies like ours export across the EU, but they're actually not very good at marketing themselves. So the point is, by me going to them, they weren't going to say, oh, for God's sake, you're a one-woman band in Dublin. What would you be doing over here in Manchester? Instead, they welcomed me, well, not literally with open arms, but you get the point. So the point is, really, when it comes to money, there's lots of it out there. There's loads of it out there. But often, it just is looking for a home. And if you can present an open mind, oh, I'm telling you, it's out there. There's a world of it out there. Loads of it. I'll give you another one. Since you're laughing at that one, right, we'll keep going there. Another one, which is super and utterly underapplied for, is Erasmus for young entrepreneurs, right? So let's say you are someone who's under 3 years in business or pre-revenue, right? You can apply, and this is non-competitive, so you'll get this if you apply for it. You can apply for Erasmus for young entrepreneurs, which means that you can get between 1 and 6 months of a funded work experience in another entrepreneur's company in another country within the EU 28, of which, of course, one of them could be in Ireland. So you don't need necessarily a language. The young bit doesn't refer to anybody's age, although you would absolutely qualify. The young bit refers to the age of the company. So that's what I mean. If you're under 3 years in business or pre-trading, you can do this. Now, let's say on the other hand, you're looking for somebody to come in and take over some of your workload because you're really busy at the moment, but you haven't got the money to pay for somebody. You can be a host entrepreneur, where again, the European Commission will pay for somebody to come to your business and work between 1 and 6 months to give them experience, and they will pay for it. And that one is utterly underapplied for. I was the MC for the 5th launch of that programme in Dublin, quite simply because people simply aren't applying for it. So I'm telling you, there's loads of money. Don't worry about that at all. Now, next one. Failure. Failure, the fear of failure. Now, I am walking fear, okay? I'm afraid of everything. I have been afraid of everything all of my life. I've been afraid of failure. I've been afraid of failing in relationships. I've been afraid of failing in business. I've been afraid of failing as a sister. I've been afraid of failing. So often I have been afraid of failing. I've been afraid of standing up here in front of you today and not doing a good job. And I'm still shaking that off at the moment here, by the way. But the point is, what I have learned to do is not feel bad because I fear of failure, or not feel that I should get rid of it. I've learned to live with it. And now I'm perfectly good friends with fear, because when I know I'm feeling fearful, then I know I'm pushing myself. So actually now I'm quite welcoming of fear because I think it's great. And what's more is that one of the best ways of dealing with it is questioning, well, what's the worst that could happen? Now, let's just think about, what's the worst that could have happened if I came over to Manchester that time for the Queen's Jubilee, well, 2 days before the Queen's Jubilee, and I spent the €300, and I met lots of people on the delegation, and I made contacts in Manchester. Like, really, what did failure look like? That was it. The worst that could have happened was that I met new people. God, that's awful. Like, that's all. That's really and truly all. There's no more. I mean, and okay, maybe a dent to my ego, but that gets that most of the time anyway, so I won't take much notice of that. So really the cost of failure was nothing. In fact, it was negative, because I would have met new people who were on the delegation from Dublin anyway. So sometimes, as I say, if you hold up that fear that you have of failure and you look at what would really happen if it did, do you know what? It's actually not that bad. And I've failed at loads of things. I'm currently working on a business at the moment, a new business at the moment, where really we're on the edge now of where I don't really think that what we're doing at the moment is working. And other people could perceive that as the business has failed. I don't think so. We just have to look at it from another angle. And I have to have a potentially difficult conversation on Monday when I go back with my business partner on that. But you know what? I'll deal with it. I'll deal with it and I'll find a way around it. And somehow or other I will turn it around. Maybe it won't be what I thought it was. But now this to me thus far is the worst thing that has happened thus far in this particular business. And even still, it's not that bad. It's still not that bad. And we'll find a way out and we'll find a way forward. So if you ask yourself of what you've written down on those bags and ask yourself what would happen if it didn't work out, I would say the worst that could happen is you'll have learned something. That's all. Other than that, as I say, a dent to your ego, but you know what? People who've perfect egos, I don't really like them anyway. I really don't. I really don't. And I'm certainly not one of them. The third one is belief. And I really liked Amy's point about real models, not role models. I thought that was really good, really interesting. And sometimes I have questioned my own belief. And sometimes I have to turn to two people in order to answer the questions. And first of all has this been done before? And you know, sometimes I look at something new and I realize it's just something that I've done already dressed up in a different way. That's all it is. So sometimes I have to say, you know, let's say if I was to say, right, now I want to tackle the market in Australia. And I might say, oh God, how in the name of God would I be able to do that? How would I manage it? Where would I start, etc.? And then I realise, well, actually, Australia is just really the same as the UK, but a different part of the world. Like, that's all. So really, that's all it is, really. And it's just probably a bit more chilled out. That's about the extent of it. But I mean, that's it. So in order for me to gain access to doing business in Sydney or Melbourne or whatever, like if you took out the travel distance, which really is the only time I ever find time to sit down and actually guilt-free watch movies and drink wine at the same time, is on a long-haul flight. So therefore, that would present another opportunity, really. So sometimes you have to ask yourself, has this been done before? And if I can't answer that for yes, I've done it before, I need to turn to somebody else. And I think Marnie is a great example of this. Of really, has this been done before that a woman has risen to the position of CEO of a PLC? You could say yes, and I probably haven't met too many. Well, today you've met them. You've met her. And you've seen her, and you can go up and talk to her about how she did it. And in fact, she's telling us all how she did it already. So if she can do it, why can't I? And that's the question. That is the question, is that if other people can do it, why can't you? And sometimes I've looked at people like Bill Gates or Richard Branson. Apparently you're all friends with Richard Branson over here. What's going on, like? You know, I've tweeted him and I've tried to do that and he doesn't answer me, so. I mean, the thing is, if Richard Branson, I've read Losing My Virginity, his autobiography. I actually read that whilst on a flight to Australia, now that I think of it. And I mean, the thing is, he chanced his arm for most of it. But he just kept believing that someone would believe him more than he believed in himself. And I mean, if he can do it, well, look, really and truly, why can't I? He's got 2 arms, he's got 2 legs, he's got 24 hours in his day, same as me. So what's the problem? Well, probably he just had the proverbial to keep going, whereas maybe I question myself along the way. So when I don't have enough belief in myself, I turn to other people and I borrow theirs. And then the last one is, and this is the one that I often don't hear people talking about at all, is what happens if it works? And sometimes that's too scary. And you know what? That is scary. Sometimes, what if this actually works and this is successful, and then? And that sometimes is really where we get scared. And then we say, well, you know what? If I don't try, I won't have to face that. And I can just say, oh, well, I couldn't do it because of money or because of fear of failure or because of belief. And I cannot tell you how many women I have spoken to who are terrified of success. Terrified of it. Because it means money that they're not able to handle, because it means they think that they might have to spend less time with their family, because it means that they might then be held up as a role model in front of their peers, and they're not able to handle that. They're not able to handle it, and therefore they'll rely on the other 3 and convince themselves it's not possible. Well, I would really question you today because you're different. You're different than every other one of the 5 million people here in Manchester. You're different because you want to be a woman who is a director at a forum. You want to be different. So I would question you, if you're worried about success, go on and face it. Just face it. And I remember one day talking to a woman who said, you know, I'm afraid, she had a coaching business in Dublin. And she says, well, I'm afraid that if I got too successful, that I wouldn't have enough time with my children. And I said, why are you giving me the power as a potential client to take time away from you with your children? I said, I don't want that power. All I want is an appointment. That's all. I said, it doesn't have to take you away from your children at all. If you're good enough, which I believe you are, I will dance to your tune. You don't have to dance to mine. And you know, it's as if, literally, she took a pair of glasses off and she says, I didn't realise I had the power over my own time. And I said, well, why are you giving it away? Why? And literally from then I have to say she is now, and she has really gone on. Now, I'm not a coach or anything like it. I was just someone sitting in front of her baffled. And I asked her that question. And I'm finding it more and more and more as I find more and more successful women, and I'm finding more and more people who aspire to be successful women, because we're getting a lot more vocal about that. I'm now finding that really the barrier to development is the fear that it will actually work. And that's what I would say is very, very rarely spoken about, but I think it's time we should really start. I think it's really time we should start. And it's not okay to say that there are external things stopping us. Really, the most things that will ever stop us is inside of our own head. And Lawrence made that point a lot earlier today. So I would encourage you to think about, well, what does success look like? And you know what? If it's scary, that's normal. That's absolutely normal. But don't let that stop you. Go on and challenge that few further. And then say, well, if this really did work, how would I be able to manage it? And you will find a way. You will find a way. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Just like in the case, now Orlando, that conference, I mean, that conference to me is a tiny, tiny example of something, but it was still something in itself. So, what I would say to you is, take risks, because if you win, you'll be happy, and if you lose, you'll be wise. And that's really all you need to be. And if you need a framework for this, when I'm scared of success, because by the way, I'm not standing up here saying I have all the answers. I'm just telling you of my experience. But when I'm afraid of success, when I'm afraid of failure, or when I'm too excited about something, or I feel stuck in a rut, I use 4 letters to get me out, and they never fail. I have to say they never fail. And you've started the 4 of them already. So the 4 letters are GROW, grow, okay, and the first letter is G, goal, and you've already done that, okay. So Claire Marie has already encouraged you to do that. So G is for goal. So what is it that I would like? And also, it's really important that you state that positively. I remember going to Weight Watchers a couple of years ago, and she says, why are you here? And I said, I don't want to be fat anymore. And she says, well, you're not allowed to say that. And I said, am I in the wrong room? Like, what else am I supposed to say? And she says, no, you have to say I want to be something. You have to say I want to be slim. You want to say I want to be a certain weight, but you cannot say you don't want to be something. And I said, why? Because she says, when you get away from something, it's very easy to fall back. But when you move towards something, you'll always keep going in that direction. And it's something that I've taken with me ever since. So it's important to phrase your goal, not, I don't want to be stuck for money, I don't want to feel a certain way. It's to move towards somewhere. So that is the first thing, is state a goal and state it positively. And then secondly, which I've just done, is R for realities. What's holding you back? And write down those realities. Like I said in there, funding, belief, fear of failure, and possibly fear of success as well. So write down whatever they all are. And then split them in 2. C and NC. C is what I've control over. NC is what I don't have control over. So when you split your realities in 2 and you write down what you don't have control over, just let them go. Just forget about them, because you can't do anything anyway. But look at the C's. Look at what you have control over. And then move on to O. And O is opportunity. And write down every single opportunity that you've got to deal with each and every one of those realities. And it's amazing when you focus solely on one by one by one by one by one, how much you can actually answer those questions. And please don't feel you have to be realistic, because that really is what inhibits creativity. Don't write down, well, I could do this, but actually no, I can't because of this, that, and the other, and then it never gets there at all. Write down everything. You're the only person that's going to see this. Nobody else. So there's nobody actually going to ask you, Ash, for God's sake, you couldn't be doing that. Because there's been a fair few things in my life where people have said that, when I did actually vocalize them. And it's only now I'm getting the confidence to say, yeah, I know, but just leave it with me. So what I would say is write down O for opportunities. But the last letter is the most impactful of all. And that is W. And that is, what am I going to do about it? So of those things that you've written down, pick out 3. Just 3, and pick the easiest 3. And just do those. So what am I going to do about it? And to the first 3, and then the second 3, and then the third 3, and then the fourth 3, and then and on and on and on and on and on. And you will achieve your goal because you will simply have no choice at that stage. So they're my 4 letters, and I use them all the time. GROW, goal, realities, opportunities, and what am I going to do about it? And therefore I want to finish on this clear action point at this stage, and that is, when you're actually looking at how to achieve a goal, sometimes we really need to break it down and only go for X% of it at a time. So I would say to you, number 1 is, what could I do today? Right? Just today. Just as regards what you've written down in those bags, what could you do today? Now, not what could you do over the next year or what, oh, none of that. What could you do today? Who could you speak to today? Who could you tweet today? Who could you Google today? Who could you email today? What could you do? What could you look for? Just today. That's all. And before 4:30, because it sounds like all is going to break loose at that stage. So what can you do today? And you have a coffee break to do it, by the way. You have a coffee break to do it. Number 2, and I love this one. I use this one all the time. Is, what could I do by this day next month? What could I, now not, New Year's resolutions are mighty, but they're gone by the second week because we're all watching Coronation Street instead of going out walking. And I'm glad Yvonne wasn't here to hear me say that. But that's the reality of it. They're really big, huge, audacious goals, and we simply haven't, and we're all brilliant and everything else, but then they're too big for us to really grab hold of. And we just say, oh, we'll do it again next year. A month is much better. So I would really ask you, what could you do by this day next month? And it's amazing. If you just think about in the next month and you apply the GROW model to it, you could be a long ways past. And then the last one. This is the most fun, and this is the most powerful, and that is, who could I ask to hold me accountable? Now, I have accountability partners for most things. A very good friend of mine, we have a call every Friday at 1 o'clock, except for today, because I couldn't. But every Friday at 1 o'clock, we simply say, what did you want to do this week? What did I want to do this week? Did we do it? Why didn't we do it? And we encourage each other to go back and try again. So just think, who could I ask to hold me accountable? Is it somebody in business? Is it a friend? Is it a relative? And just, can I ask you to do one thing on this? Don't ask somebody to hold you accountable that it's going to impact their lives as well. Because sometimes if you get too successful, they can start holding you back. Just think about that in advance, because this will work. I guarantee you this will work. So ask somebody to hold you accountable who has absolutely no vested interest in you moving forward. Just please bear that in mind. A word of experience on that point. So I'm going to finish there, and I am going to just finish on a point that I wrote this piece. I always quote other people. I didn't actually realize I had anything to quote for myself, irrespective of how quickly I speak. However, the paper at home did pick me up on one thing, and apparently I said this, and that is that by going after what you truly want, you empower others to follow in your footsteps. And I really think that for the group of people who are here today, who've taken the day out to be here today, and really and truly are going to rally Manchester so much, I know, in future years, we not only have a right to be in business and to be the people who we are, but we absolutely have a responsibility to help others be who they can be too. Thank you very much.